Korean-American writer R.O.Kwon came into the spotlight in 2018 with her debut novel, The Incendiaries, after it became a bestseller in the US. And it was also named one of the best books of the year by over 40 publications. In January, Korean readers were finally able to enjoy it as well after it was published in Korean by the publisher Moonji. To tell us some more about herself, her work, and more, Ms. R.O.Kwon joins us now via video for this week's Touch Base in Seoul. Ms. Kwon, hello and welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you for your time today. We often like to start our Touch Base interviews getting to know our guests a little bit more, their backstory. Can you tell us what led you to writing? Was it always something that you wanted to do from a young age, or was it something that you discovered as you were growing up?
Yeah, of course. So I did always love to read, which I think is very common for writers. I think for me, part of what drew me to writing is that in a lot of ways, especially after I grew up very religious and I left the faith when I was 17. And I'm very, in a lot of ways, I'm always writing about that. And it was a time of intense loneliness for me.
Hmm.
And I think in books, I find books to be one of the best medicines for loneliness that I know of.
Hmm.
And so I think that's part of what drew me that's part of what drew me to writing. Also, I love words. I love words so much. I think often of somebody once said, I forget who the painter was, but there's a painter who asked why they're a painter. The painter said, "Oh, they were like, I just really love paint." And I feel this way about words. Like I love words so much. I can just stare at a word and space out. So yeah, I feel very lucky to get to do this.
Okay, so writing was perhaps something more personal then for you, rather than you getting inspiration from, say, a specific writer or a specific work.
Yeah. I think I mean I have so many writers that I love who have
Hmm.
inspired me so much, but there wasn't any particular writer that who pushed me toward writing.
Right, and let's talk about your debut novel then, The Incendiaries. It was published in 2018. How did this work come about? I understand it took you 10 years to write in the end.
It did, yeah. So I grew up so religious that my entire life plan when I was little, and as I was growing up, was to become a pastor or maybe a missionary. I wanted to serve God, and then I lost that faith when I was 17, and it was such a bewildering time because not only did I lose my faith, I also lost much of my community at the time. And then I went off to college on the East Coast. And once I went to college, I most of my new friends, almost all of my new friends, had essentially no experience of religion at all. And so they
Hmm.
would say, at some point, I would say, "Oh, I grew up really religious. I was going to be a pastor," and the reaction by and large was, "Oh, that's so weird, but good for you. You're free. Now you can drink and have fun like the rest of us." And for me, it didn't feel like freedom. It didn't feel like liberation. It was
Right.
and is the central loss of my life. And so I think I wanted to write about that great divide in myself and in the world as well. Between a great divide can exist between people with such different worldviews, between a Christian and what was in a lot of ways a pretty fanatically Christian worldview, and my worldview now, which is much more agnostic.
Right. So, talking a little about the book itself, it's about a stormy relationship of a young couple from different backgrounds at an elite college as they start to get involved in a cult as well. It's a powerful and dark novel about love, loss, and the loss of faith, which you just talked about. How did you come up with the characters? Where did you find the inspiration for those characters?
Sure. Well, thank you for saying that. Um, let's see. I think, in a lot of ways, all three characters are. There's a lot of me in all three of the characters, and then they're all completely different as well. I think part of how the characters came about is that when I first worked on the novels, this is part of why it took so long to write it. But I think I'm also just I just take a long time on books. I spent 2 years writing a book about a woman who is just kind of sad and walks around and thinks about the loss of God. And I love a sad walking around kind of book, but I don't think this is what it wanted to be.
Mm,
And I realized that the book started coming to life for me when sort of like the strong religious beliefs got externalized. And so there's Will, who used to be very Christian and lost his faith. There's Phoebe, who did not grow up religious but is finding a version of faith and is joining this cult. And then there's John Leal, this cult leader.
right. And so you're saying there's a bit of you in all of these very different characters, though.
Yeah, yeah, very much so. I think the religious impulse was a big one for me. Of course, there's also something very bewildering for me, and for a lot of people, of course, about going off to college.
Mm,
And I grew up in a part of LA that is, it's predominantly Asian and predominantly Korean at that. We didn't have sort of like the incredibly stark differences in class that I
right.
ran up against at college at Yale, where it came as a real shock to me, and I found that
Mm.
there was no way to write about college students without also writing about race and class and all these other forces, and so those also played into how the characters came about as well.
So it's a very personal story, really, this novel, this, I guess, sort of exploration of, as you said, your loss of faith as well. How did it feel when then the book started to find success and you knew that it was moving readers? The book was a bestseller in the US with several award nominations. It must have been quite exciting, but also some sort of, I guess, a sort of validation for this long process as well that you took to get there.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that. It was really exciting, and I'm so grateful that the book has found its way to so many readers and that so many people have responded to it. It's been especially moving for me hearing from people who grew up very religious and lost their faith, and or just have a very complicated relationship with faith,
Mm,
because I know that I was so desperately lonely when I lost my faith. I honestly felt like, I was 17 and a little prone to exaggeration, but at 17, I felt as though I might be the loneliest person in the world. And so hearing people say, I people I've had a lot of people say things like, I don't think I've ever seen my loss of faith reflected in a book like this before, and that always just moves me to tears.
mm.
Because I was writing that book for that 17-year-old girl who felt alone in the world. It has also been, I mean, it's been out for a little while now, but even so, I think when one spends that long with a book and it's such a private project for so long, it is still, it feels a little bit as though I've had a dream for a very long time, and then people talk to me about it, and it's like, wait, how do you know about this dream? I thought that was just me, and it's, oh, no, 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 right. It's in paper, it's on paper, people read it.
Right, and not just on paper, it's been translated into 6 languages and also now Korean as well, so 7 languages. The Korean translation was published just this January. How did it feel to know that the book would be released here in your mother country?
Oh, it means so, so, so much. I've cried with excitement about it so much. I love Moonji and the publisher, and everyone I've worked with there. The translator Kim Jion has been so amazing, and I just feel so honored that the book has found its way to Korea, and through such a wonderful publisher. My parents have been beside themselves. They've I know my father, my mother tells me that my father has just been, my father's been emailing all of his high school and college alumni friends from Korea and telling them about this. My grandmother doesn't really read a lot of English.
Right.
She lives in the US, but doesn't read a lot of English. So it means a whole lot that my harmony is going to be able to read this book finally.
Well, did you have any expectations? Were you nervous at all? The fact that Korean readers were going to read this book, and especially, as you said, people close to you as well, because it is something, as you said, about the loss of faith. And I believe a lot of your family are still religious as well. I read in another interview.
Yeah, they are. They are. Much of my family is still quite religious. Actually, pretty much all of my family is still close to all of my family is very religious. But I was less anxious about that part, and honestly, I think it's more when it comes to my family and when it comes to people who my parents go to church with. I almost wish I turned off very specifically all of the scenes that have to do with sex and just tell everybody just skip this part. Just walk away. I think that part. Those parts make me anxious. I'm less anxious about the religious parts because
Okay.
my family and I talk pretty openly about. They've known for a long time that I'm not religious anymore. Although my mother is very religious and she's a woman of great faith, and she
Mm.
essentially believes that by this Friday, she's praying for me every day. By this Friday, she thinks I'm returning to the faith. And if not this Friday, then this Sunday. And so,
Okay, and have you had any reaction from Korean readers yet? Have they responded the way you thought they would?
um, well, there have been a range of reactions, and it's been really interesting to see what people are saying online and to
Hmm.
see the coverage. I wouldn't say that there have been any especially big surprises. No, I'm really just overwhelmed with joy and thankfulness that this book is out in Korean now.
Well, the Korean edition of the Incendiaries, simply titled Incendiaries in Korean, is available now in Korea. We should also mention, just before we go, the Incendiaries is being developed into a TV series to be directed by Kogonada, who directed another TV adaptation by a Korean American writer, another bestseller by a Korean American writer, that's Pachinko. That sounds like another exciting chapter for this work. Can you give us any update on that?
Of course. Well, I'm so thrilled that the book found its way to Kogonada and to Film Nation and to the writer Lisa Randolph. I love their work so much, and I respect them so much as artists. And so this is thrilling. They are currently. I'm not all that involved. I'm looking at the scripts, but I'm not. I'm not really. I'm not. I'm not. I'm not. I'm not. I'm not like day to day involved with
Sure.
the script, which I think is good. Because I'm so excited about the TV show, and it'll be its own thing.
Very much like Pachinko was as well, I think.
Yeah.
Finally, what's next for you? I read that you've been working on your next novel for 7 years now already as well.
I I'm really not a fast writer, is what I've been realizing. The next book is so now it's just getting to be 7.5 years. I'm really hoping not to get to 8, so we'll see. But it's about a photographer who who becomes obsessed with a ballerina, and they become professionally and then personally obsessed. And they're both women, they're both Korean, and I'm excited to see what comes of it.
Yes, I think fans of your work will be excited definitely to see that as well. We'll have to wrap it up there. We've been speaking to writer R.O.Kwon for Touch Base in Seoul. Thank you once again for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. I feel so honored.